All right. Hello, everybody. We're getting started here. I'm super excited about today's call, man. So first and foremost, thank you everyone who is jumping on board today. It's going to be a lot of fun. This is our first ever event. So, bear with us. There might be some issues here and there. And if you are having technical difficulties, please do let us know in the chat. Um, but I'm going to give everybody a few minutes here to jump on and kind of get settled. But while we do that, I want to go ahead and introduce our guest today. So, one of my favorite people that I've ever worked with is a gentleman by the name of Mike Anderson. I worked with him at Cybercoders, and we kind of came up together a little bit. Like I was probably a year or two ahead of him there, but um, you know, from the moment I met him, he's been someone who has just been such a good, genuine person. He genuinely has something that I think a lot of us try to aspire for. He's a fantastic salesperson. He's gregarious and just outgoing and such a fun person to talk to and get to know. One of the things I love about Mike is that he doesn't have like this crazy background in necessarily in like sales, and he's not like, he doesn't try and portray himself to be the smartest person in the room. He's just a grinder, right? He just grinds his ass off, and he is someone who's been committed to the craft of salesmanship, business development, and being a great recruiter. So um, he's in that time since we've been in business together and working in the recruiting space. Mike has gone to be a 9-time P Club attainer. I think I've beat him one quarter out of my entire career at Cybercoders, and which is really impressive. And he's just someone that just is constantly pushing that threshold. In the last 3 years, he's been a 7-figure biller, and and one of, I think, one or two of those years he did over 2 million in billing, right? So not just like someone who's made it and got lucky or whatever it was. Like, this guy knows exactly what he's doing. And so what's cool about that is that he's made a process that is all about just being as simple as possible and getting to know exactly what his clients are looking for and putting the right types of candidates right in front of them right away. And so I'm excited to have Mike on, and I'll go ahead and let Mike give an introduction to himself too. Thank you for having me.
Yeah,
Thanks for coming on.
yeah. Thanks for having me, Will. Excited to be here. Yeah, I've been. I can't believe it. I was just thinking about that. We started in the game back in. Well, I started the game back in 2013, year before me, and then I remember at an event you had a 300K quarter and you went up there and they were playing music for you, and I was like, dude, I want to be that guy, and then here we are. So it's crazy if you just don't take your foot off the gas. Good things happen. So yeah, it's been a ride. Been in the game a long time, about a decade now, and like recruiting, like anything else, it's kind of one of those things where you're like it's a weird skill to be good at, but you're like, it's kind of nice to be good at it, but it's also sometimes annoying to be good at it. So, anyways, it's 10 years in, and yeah, I wouldn't trade it for the world. It's a great gig. I love doing it, and I'm at a place now where I really enjoy showing other people the way, and like, because there's plenty of meat on the bone for a lot of people in this business, and so like I enjoy seeing the light bulb come on for other people, especially when they do the job the right way with transparency and respect and like
Yeah.
just overall quality salesmanship where people buy you, and then whatever you're selling, they'll just take that on top of it, and that's what I go for.
Yeah, man, and it shows through and through. I mean, like, you've built a crazy audience on LinkedIn just because of like how transparent you are. I mean, you've had your struggles, right? And one of the things I always talk about in as far as like billers go, you know, people who are high achievers always have a bit of a struggle. They have a bit of a chip on their shoulders, things that kind of happen in their lives, right? And they're trying to get past those things. And like, you are such a good testament to that. So kudos to you for always being as open and transparent about things. So I want to make sure that everybody knows what to do here. So if you guys have questions, use the chat box, right? So as Mike's going through some of the conversation that we're having here, please just chime in, and then we'll see if we can jump you in and have a conversation about it. We might even have a caller come in too. So let's get right into it, Mike.
Let's do it.
So the big thing that I think everybody's dealing with right now is we're struggling right now. Recruiters are hurting, and a lot of recruiters, specifically in the tech market, are getting just pummeled and everything like that, right? So there's a lot of challenges that are coming up, and everybody's facing. You've had a 13 or close to a decade long career here. What's some of the biggest challenges that you faced in your career that you've dealt with, and like they're maybe similar to what we're currently dealing with right now? And how did you get through those things?
So, um, I would say hands down the biggest challenge I've dealt with in my career. Well, two. I mean, on the personal side, once I got honest about my sobriety and told the world about that, I had to start. I couldn't be honest in an AA meeting and then not honest with clients and candidates. So I was scared to do that because in sales, it's a very different world. And for a long time in my career, there's a lot of stuff I'm not proud of with not doing the job the way that it should be done. And about 5 years ago, I had a transformation where I just started to play my cards face up in all my interactions. So that was huge. And I would say to anybody that's working at an agency, if you've got a boss or somebody that's telling you to do things underhanded, you're probably at the wrong place. So I'll just say that straight out. But the other biggest challenge that I dealt with, and we all dealt with it, was COVID. The world stopped, and when that happened, that was wild, right? It was like, I think that week when I remember March 11th, 2020. I think that next week I had probably like 25 interviews going down, and it ended up I think two took place because nobody knew what was happening,
Yeah.
and it was just wild. And so the only thing I had ever known is just classic sales was just don't stop filling the funnel. Now, it doesn't mean that I put my head under a rock and I wasn't an idiot, but I knew that the relationships were always going to last. And one of the big things for me is, when I was in an agency, a lot of times I looked at very finite, like how am I going to make X amount of money by this date and do this, and like I very was focused on like a job and a transaction and like closing a candidate and like getting that done. And luckily for me, prior to COVID, I had already shifted my mind to building relationships over the long term. And so I looked at COVID as an opportunity to just build quality relationships, just keep conversations going, whatever. Thankfully I had the financial wherewithal to be able to do that. But yeah, it was big. And so, and sure enough, the relationships that I had, the moment a company could come back and hire, I was the first call, and like that stuff just carried me through. And so I've found that if you could stay focused on the relationship, the dips in this business, like they are right now, are the comeback is that much bigger. And so like if you build 50K in a quarter and it's a bad quarter for you, once it comes back, that might be 300K, and now you made up for it on an average of 175. So like, is it bad? It's bad, but yeah, can you trust the relationship piece and the values of this business? And if you can, I think you'll have a long-term career in it. So I don't know if that kind of answers your question, but for me, that was a
No.
big thing for me is relationships.
Yeah, relationships are huge, right? And so when you talk about relationships, like how did you build those relationships? Like, is there any sort of strategy that you put in place, especially during that COVID time or those down times? Like, what was your thought process, and what was your game plan there?
Totally. So COVID actually for me it changed the game, right? I remember one of my best friends, Dan, he was telling me I thought COVID when the world was going to end. I went into my anxiety mode or whatever, and Dan's like, I think this is going to be a good thing for tech, and I was like, how so? And he's like, well, they're going to have to hire remotely, and then the candidate pools are going to open up, and then numbers just went crazy. And so Dan predicted it right, but for me like one of the things that COVID did was, now they're hiring remotely, and now they're hiring, whatever they're hiring, outside of the office. And so, and we were remote too. So what I started doing was the biggest thing that I started doing is I started taking all of my job orders and all of my meetings over Zoom and over Google Meets. And like what I would do, and honestly, this is what we would do, is I would be on a call with a hiring manager or a company or whatever after I get them on the hook through an email, and we can talk about that in a second. But after I got that call set up, and I would be on a Zoom meeting, and I would have, I ran a split desk, and that was a massive revelation to me, which we can also talk about. But I ran a split desk, and so like that year I did 2.2 million. That was 4.4 million fees. So there was another 2.2 that I was passing off to recruiters on my team. And so what I would
Wait,
do is I would get a job order. Go ahead.
pause real quick. So like I think like something we need to talk about here. So one of the things that I was always under the impression of when you said 2.2 million, I thought that was full desk. So you're saying
No,
like 2.2 million was half desk?
2.2 million was half desk. So
So
it was
you did
really
a total of
4.4.
4 million. Wow. Oh, guys,
Mm-hmm.
like that's those are big numbers for a single biller, like, or a single person on and you're doing mostly perm, right? Like you're not even doing contract at this time.
No, I placed one contractor my whole life, and the guy 4 hours into the job stole the company laptop and left. And I was like, I'm never doing that again. So I said, forget contractors. No, I haven't done a contract placement, and I don't even know how long. I wouldn't even know how to pitch it. Um,
That's insane. Okay,
yeah,
sorry.
the 2.2.
Please
No,
keep
you're
going.
good.
Please keep going.
So, but the model, and we kind of just figured this out as we go. Like one of the big things I talk about is just go and then learn how to swim. Right,
Yeah.
ready, fire, and then aim. Not ready, aim, fire. And so we just started taking these calls. And what I would do is I started noticing once I did it on Google Meets or Zoom or whatever, and I had 10, 15 other recruiters sitting on these meetings wanting to listen to the stuff that they wanted to recruit on because they wanted to recruit on Mike's recs. Once I started realizing that, I would say to a hiring manager, hey, you don't need to talk to 17 other agencies because literally you have all of these people competing for your commission. And like they would laugh about that and they would be a little bit more like receptive to it. And
Yeah.
they'd be like, okay. And they just appreciated the fact that, and the good news for them was, they might have 15 recruiters or 10 recruiters or however many it was, but all of that stuff was getting to me first. And then I was one point of contact. And so like it was a win-win for them. And I remember, I had a conversation with Neetu Gulati. Oh, she's the queen of billing, as we all know. Neetu, shout out Neetu if she's on. I don't know. She's best in the business. Love her. But I had a conversation with Neetu Gulati when I first got in the business back in Cybercoders, and I went up to her and I was like, I remember going up to her and I was like, look, I know that if you mow the White House lawn, you shouldn't ask the president what to do with the clippings, but do you want to go to lunch? And she was like, what? And so I talked to her. Anyways, I remember her big shtick was, if you want to do this long term, you have to do a split desk model. You just have to. And I was like, you're crazy, you're crazy, you're crazy. And I did, 500-600K on my own. And I was like, take that. And she's like, up there with 1.9, 2.7, 3 point whatever. And I'm like, okay, there's something to this. And finally, when I got to my new agency and realized that because we didn't have a database, we had to do it this way, that split desk model changed the game. And so I would say to anybody, if you can do the split desk model, it's a great one to do.
That's one of the things like I find very interesting about this story too, because when I promoted this, I talked about how like you did this at one of the biggest agencies in the country, right? Collabra is huge, right? And at the end of the day, though, Collabra is a contract business company, right? And they at the time when you jumped in, they didn't really have a perm business. Yeah, they probably had a bit of a database, but I mean, at the end of the day, it's like you built this all on your own, right? Like, so tell us a little bit about that and kind of like what was and what was those results? How did that affect your meaning or like who you were as a biller, and kind of where that kind of like confidence came from after that?
So it's a great question. When I was working at Cybercoders, it was pick up a job, plug in a Boolean, spit out a bunch of candidates, and start calling and whatever. And I was it was almost a split desk model, but the ATS was doing the split for you. And when I came over to Collabra, now Ascendion, by the way, great company. Like when I was there, I I was like, okay, like I would pick up jobs and I'd be like, this is great, and I'd be like, wait, where are the candidates? And I'd be like, wait, I got to go recruit them. Like that's crazy. Like I'm not a recruiter. Like I'm good at business development. I'm not the greatest recruiter, and I knew that, and I knew my shortcomings. And so because of that, I was like, okay, I'm going to put faith into what Neetu had told me 2 years prior. I'm going to try this split desk model. And my closest friend and colleague, Dan Miramontes at the time I remember sitting next to him at a desk, and he's like, dude, pick up business and I'll go find candidates. Let's just try that and see what happens. The only way we're both going to make money here. And so I was like, okay. So I remember my first client was right here. Shout out a company called Chime. And nice. We had, and so we did, and so I reached out to this company, and Dan was like, Chime looks cool, let's just go after it. And I was like, okay. So I go after Chime, and I think I hit, I don't know, 7 or 8 people in their company, whatever. And I finally got their VP of engineering to get back to me, and he was like, I was so annoying that he finally said, okay, I'll talk to you. Geez, I'll talk to you, whatever. Now, I mean, fast forward to 5 years later, him and I are really good friends. He actually lives down the street from me, and we played golf and all this stuff. Awesome guy. But my point is that like it just started there. And then once they figured out we could do one and we knew they were hiring aggressively, it was watch, rinse, repeat. And then that was the model that started. And so like for us, once we figured out a scalable model, then it was like, okay, plug and play. And like, I would say that my suggestion here would be to anybody listening is you've got to figure out, like if you do a deal, and this is, I say this all the time, if you do a deal and then you look back on how you did that deal and you're like, I don't know how I did that. That's a problem.
You problem. Yep.
But that's a problem. But if you do a deal and you're like, I could do that again, that's a good thing. Go do it again.
Yeah.
Like that's how you
Yeah.
turn that into from a job to a career. So
That's one of the things I teach on to my students and the cohorts that we dive into, and it's really just like mapping out your model. Like at the end of the day, like you said, like go out and try a lot of this stuff. And this is kind of what I'm hearing, right? Is like, hey, like I have an idea, I have a thesis, I have a theory. Like I'm gonna go out and validate that through the market and basically go out and see how much business I can get. If it works, great. If it doesn't, I need to come back to the table and figure it out. But what I love
definitely.
about what you're talking about is just like, hey, like draw out your process and really understand what that looks like and how you can repeat that over and over and over again. And I
But I
think
want to
that's
throw in
really
one
cool.
thing there. Yeah,
Yeah.
let me add one thing that will. Yes, draw out your process, but if you can't draw out your process unless you get to the finish line to see what you did. Then you can
Yeah.
backtrack and reverse engineer what it is that you did. If you draw the process, 99% of the things you draw out ahead of time are not going to work out. So you have to
Yep.
start going, then redraw,
Mm.
then retrace, then do it again. And like
Yep.
I told you a story about Chime. What I didn't tell you was the 75 people that told me to kick rocks, F off, you suck, you're worthless, all the stuff that we deal with. And like if I would let that get me down, we wouldn't be here. And so like my point is that like you are going to deal with that. That's part of it. And so like just iterate. And I say this all the time, when you do get something and something does go your way, ask the person on the other end of that call, whether client, whether candidate, what was it that I did or said that got you here? And if
Yep.
you can, they'll tell you, they'll appreciate the fact that you're asking. And I say that all the time. Anyways, sorry to cut you off.
So let's get into the process that you're doing, right? Because I think that's what everybody wants to come into. We're definitely chiming in and like understanding like what kind of those results are and what that looks like. But everybody's trying to figure out what does that process look like and
Mm-hmm.
how do they put into play a step-by-step plan today that can get them going based on your proven results here.
So yeah, a couple things. Number one, if you like, I always talk about this business as you could be successful if you got, and I had a mentor, Kyle O'Neill, tell me this, but if you could get dropped in the middle of a desert and have just a phone and internet, could you make money? And the answer to that question should be yes. And if it's not yes, then you've got to figure out why it's not yes. For me, when the tech market died, it was like, look, you can complain or you could figure it out. And so one of the things what I do is, regardless of industry and regardless of whether a company's hiring or not, I'm very big on just going after clients accordingly. And so I always target companies that are anywhere between 25 to 150 people. And I don't want to work with companies that are much bigger than that because most of the time they have internal TA and HR and all the stuff that are going to be a struggle for us to deal with. And again, conventional wisdom says don't deal with TA and don't deal with HR, and that's fine if you want to go that route. I think in 2023 and for a while, if you build a partnership with them, they're most of the time they're great people, and so I find it's totally fine to not go around them and deal with them directly. Obviously, a hiring manager is fantastic, but that doesn't hurt. But anyways, companies that are 25 to 150, regardless of industry, and then from that point, all you want to do, I always pitch a candidate. I pitch talent. So for me, it's pretty simple, right? I'll find, as I think, the best person in their company that I'm targeting, and then I'll go find a profile similar to that. I'll go find them on LinkedIn, and then I'll try to get that person on the hook, and then go back and pitch. Say, hey, I'm trying to break into an industry. I'd love to use your background if you're open to it. And then, and sometimes people can say no, sometimes they'll say yes. But once you get somebody, it takes one or two, go back and pitch them back to a company and say, hey, I saw you guys hired Steve, and it looks like, if I don't know if you're hiring or not, but I've got Steve's clone over here. Any interest? And like, that's kind of the game that I play. And just, if you can do any industry, anytime. And I think one of the things that low hanging fruit is you got to find out if they're hiring, you got to see if they have job postings, all that stuff. I don't do that at all.
Yeah.
Like that might be 20% of companies, right? Like if there's 100% of companies
Less.
and 20% are
Less.
hiring, yep,
Three.
10%, 5, 3, whatever the number is, a little bit,
Three.
right? That are advertising that they're hiring. There's another 65% to 70%. I mean, how many times you talk to a company, they're like, well, we're not like hiring right now, but if the right person came along, we'd look at them. That's what I'm trying to get at. I'm trying to get those companies because when they are hiring, if you did a good job when they were maybe hiring, they'll definitely use you when they are. And like, that's the idea. And so I always say that true business development is both sales and marketing. Sales says, hey, buy this from me right now. Marketing says, hey, when you're ready, I'm here. And I think that if you do it the right way, you can do both. So
That's that. I mean, like literally, you're saying what I tell people every day in our newsletter. I don't know if you've been reading it. I'm like I am. on the go to market series right now, and that's exactly what we're talking about. We're talking about, hey, like, go identify opportunities if you're going to do NPCs, right? Candidates, see where they're at. Go look at a company that's similar to them, size, scope, scale, industry. See if you can get them over there and and start pitching them, right? It's not rocket science, but I think a lot of people kind of get stuck in certain things like, oh, well, I have this really great candidate from, a FANG company and all this stuff. So like, you know, everybody's, viewpoint of an ideal candidate or NPC is kind of a little bit different. Like, how do you identify a really great candidate? What are some of those key factors for you?
Yeah, it depends on. I mean, it's going to depend on the industry, but most of the time it's real simple. It's have they been at their current company for over a year, and then have they been? Do you see career progression? At least three career progressions. So like if they've been a junior engineer, maybe they're a mid, now they're a senior or staff or whatever. Some career progression. That's a good candidate. And then do they have like or they have a college degree? And like I'm not saying again, don't quote me here, but I'm not saying if they don't have a college degree, they're a bad candidate. I'm saying if you're looking at a marketable candidate, which by the way, your product, which is your candidate, is what gets you in the door. Like that's the only thing you have that they're going to look at if they say, sure, send over a resume. And so you have to show something decent. Like they don't want your sales pitch as to why they should interview a person that doesn't already match what they have. Like they don't care about that right now. That's for later on. Once you need to close a candidate on deal number 4, number 5 is when you need to say, hey, trust me. They don't trust you yet. So you've got to lead with the proper it's got to be a shiny Ferrari the first time. It has to be. It's the only way they're going to get them on the lot. So anyway, I go on and on about that, but that's big.
I love that. I think it's freaking awesome what you just said there. And you're so right, right? Like you got to hit them with the exact candidate that they're looking for that matches that thing. And so like that kind of brings into the idea of like, like when you're talking about exact matches candidates, like that means that you're not sending out that many emails or phone calls or anything like that. And so before I go into validation of a candidate, like could you kind of run me through just a quick understanding of like once you've got a candidate, you're like, oh, this is a good candidate, I want to pass them off. What kind of metrics are you looking at when you're saying I got to pass this off to the right person or get this person out to as many people as possible?
Yeah. So for me, like when I go try to get companies or get clients, or if I'm doing like a from scratch business development approach, my thing is simple. Is I'm just doing it's very very basic. It's 5 companies a day, and I'm targeting 5 companies a day, 25 to 150, no more than that. On number of employees, not even looking at revenue. I have no idea if they're hiring. Doesn't matter. Like I'm just trying. Again, I'm focused on the relationship piece. I'm not even focused on placing that candidate. That's it. And so I'll send that out, and my rule is real simple. For every 25 employees, 1 decision maker. So if they've got 100 people, 4 people out, send a message out. So if that's 5 companies and 100 people, that's what is that? 20 emails. It ain't that many, and that's it. And then just that's my work here's done. See you later. And if they're like, I don't need to I'm not focused on anything else. I generally will receive anywhere between a 10 to 15% response rate. Someone will tell me to kick rocks. Someone will tell me to unsubscribe. Someone will tell me to F off. All the stuff, I'm used to it. I have a folder for unsubscribes that I just smile at when I look at when I wonder if it's worth it or not. And I just keep going. And a lot of times, and so that's what I'm focused on. And then we can talk about messaging and all other stuff. But hopefully that answers your question.
Okay, so freaking love this because I have a client, a prospect that I work with, and they were like, "Oh, I send out 1,000 messages a day," and I'm like, "Dude, your total addressable market is just getting destroyed, and you're gonna it gave me anxiety, and I literally was like stuck in a way. I was like, I don't know how I can help you because you're so stuck on this idea that you need to send out 1,000 messages that like you're not going to listen to what I have to tell you, so it's probably not the right fit here." So it is just really interesting to me because like they're so unbelievable about this. They believe it so much, so they have to send out 1,000 messages a day, they have to send out 1,000 emails, they have to do all this stuff, and it's like, nah, like it's not that. And it's just all about just quality, right? And like you said, you sent out, you're just doing it consistently, 5 a day, five a
5
day per
companies a day.
client.
Dude, and that's manageable. That's like saying, hey, I'm going to go walk my 3,000 steps today because I want to stay in shape. Like it's manageable. 1,000 a day. If I woke up saying I would send 1,000 messages today, I would not be in recruiting. I'd be like, this is awful. It's horrible.
It's awful.
Like, yeah.
and that's the kind of messaging that comes across, and people are like, oh well, this sucks. Like, so and like one of the funny things I actually found in one of your posts you like a while back was that you sent out this message, you're doing your BD, and like somebody was like, this is hilarious but no, right? And so
Mhm.
like let's talk a little bit about that messaging really quick. And you don't have to get into the details here, but just like what how much does humor like and like that informal tone kind of come into play? And this is going to transition into our next segment really quickly here.
Okay, so I mean, if you know anything about me, if you've ever talked to me, like I have to find humor in everything I do because this job is way too not serious to like take it too seriously. So like when you go, what I don't do is I'm not going to reprint the resume and say I've got a guy that does 74% of quota and does this and he knows how to code in Python and he did the back end flip flap that blah blah blah. I didn't go to school for tech. I didn't go to school for marketing. I didn't go to school for any of that. I went to school of hard knocks for talking to people. And so like all I do is try to make it as fun and energetic and as lively as possible because here's the deal. When that candidate doesn't take the job or they go somewhere else, if my entire shtick is built on the fact that I have that candidate only and I have no personality, I'm never going to build a relationship with that hiring manager. If our relationship is built on the fact of a resume I can find, I'm not going to have a long relationship with them. But if it's built on me being relatively funny, but also talking about what I can provide, that's how you build a long-standing relationship. And
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know who wakes up and says I want to do business development for the rest of my life. I don't. I definitely don't. I have zero interest in doing that. What I want to do is and I talk about this all the time, build relationships with people so that your business will build itself in due time. It takes a concerted effort over a long period of time, but once it gets going, you can turn this thing from a job to a career if you do it the right way. And I think that having fun with the personality, I go back and laugh with my hiring managers and my clients at times when I'm like, how do we actually start? And sometimes it's like I remember one time I put my phone number on a resume that I told him was the candidate, but it wasn't the candidate, it was my phone number. And so he called me thinking he was calling the candidate. And that was like, that didn't go that well. But like 6 months later, we were working together because he appreciated the fact that how much I hustled for that. So like, you could do anything, but my messaging is very fun, very out there, not formal at all, very easygoing, not crazy at all.
Nice. I love it, man. So I know we're kind of like coming close to time here.
Yep.
And I know a lot of people are going to have questions, so I want to make sure we open those up. But I want to jump into a segment if you don't mind, on uh, on the recruiting with Dynamite, live recruiting with Dynamite podcast here, or whatever we're going to call this webinar event. And
I like
so
the name.
the live Dynamite event segment is called Blast or Pass, or Blast or Trash. I apologize. Blast or Trash. So Blast or Trash. We're gonna look at some emails. And just as like a perspective, like what do you think? Should this email go out, or are we trashing this thing? Just it's just we're gonna do one or two of these, nothing crazy. So you ready for this?
Let's do it.
Let's window. We're gonna go with the entire screen here. Give me a second, guys. Share. All right. So can you see the screen?
It's loading. Let's see. Still
It's
loading.
still loading.
Still seeing
It's give
dots. There
Now
it
we're
is.
ready. Now we get the
No,
full view. Okay. So can you see it now?
I can.
The email says, question about about your recruiting with Dynamite. Hey Will, good afternoon. Reaching out to you because we saw your recruiting with Dynamite and genuinely impressed. If we can reduce your recruiting with Dynamite fees and time by 80% consumed by in your staffing process, would you be would be this something that can help your recruiting with Dynamite? Question mark. I'm taking on 5 case studies for free because that's all I can handle. I just want to get some testimonials for our AI solution. Let me know. Speak soon. Let's talk about
Okay.
that.
Not much to talk about. That is pure trash. Do not blast that out. It's anyways, don't blast it out. I don't want to, I don't know who's watching or whatever, but no, don't send that. That's not a good email. Don't do that.
That's not a good email. All right.
That's
And
not a
so
good
like,
email.
but what I want people to see is that like these are the emails that people get. I get these almost every day, right? And it's funny because this is what you're competing against, people, right? Like If you just take a little bit of time and create better emails, like this is going to be better. You're just gonna crush it, right?
Oh
So
my gosh. Before we even start on this one, the hope you're doing well, I cringe. Like, no.
immediately,
It's
right?
already, like we could read it, but it's already a trash. Hope you're doing well. No, you don't. You don't hope he's doing well. You just want, like, don't do that. Like, it's like the 5th of July email when somebody says, hey, hope you had a good 4th of July. Okay, here's my sales pitch. No.
And at the end of the day, you can actually put that stuff in. Those niceties are fine, but put them at the end, right?
Totally.
Like no nobody like it's just don't put the niceties in. So
I'm
anyway,
not.
let's take out the
Yeah.
nicety. Recruiting on demand. We are specialized RPO process recruiting process outsourcing firm, in the sense that we can staff for a range of different industries, end-to-end recruiting, full cycle recruiting. Do let me know if you are interested. I'd be sharing your more details about our job boards, Viz, Monster, and Career Builder to our resources. Then arrange a call or more detailed discussion time.
I
What are we
mean,
doing here?
this is a no-brainer trash. I mean, even if
Yeah,
you take out
this
the
is
half
trash.
you're doing well, I mean, it's just bad. The grammar, it's just no, it's not. There's nothing about like this. The thing about this email is there's 714 of these in your inbox. Like, there's
Yeah,
nothing different about
thousands.
this. That's what I'm saying. Like, how are you
So
different?
So, and this is going to kind of go into this one last question for you here. Like, when we're looking at emails, that everybody's kind of in this play of, well, I don't know what my process should look like, and should I be sending emails? Should I be sending in mails? Should I be doing cold calls? Should I be
Mm.
building a LinkedIn brand? You know, like out of all those things that I just described here, how important is one or the other, and what's your take on it? Like, what's your process on that?
So here's the thing. I've known people that have success in all different forms that they use. For me, again, if you're asking just Mike Anderson, what I've seen success with is very simple. It's just flat Outlook. And it's doing regular Outlook. It's not LinkedIn. It's not once they connect with you, then pitching them right away because that's what 98% of people do, or they just want 15 minutes of your time to pick your brain. No, they're not going to do that. Like that, they don't want that. Send an email to their work email and just be genuine about it and be a lot more creative than those emails that we had.
Yeah,
But anyway, yeah. And the reason for that, and also another thing I want to talk about that is the timing of when you send an email. When you do business development, like this changed the game for me when I figured this out. Do it at like the evenings. And most of the time it's
yeah,
because like a hiring manager on a Sunday night's like looking at his list of what he's got to do on Monday and he's freaking out because he's got to do 15 things. He doesn't want an email from you at 8:30 in the morning that says, hey, good afternoon, hope you're doing well. Like when I was a director to Sendion, I would look for every Monday I'd be on the treadmill like 8:30 in the morning and I would just watch my phone just of all these, hope you had a good weekend, here's our new software, here's our new software, here's our new software. And it's just like delete, 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 delete. Now, you want to sell me a software at the end of the day when I'm exhausted and I have problems that I've dealt with or whatever, and now I'm finally like, huh? And then you pop in my inbox and it's a quality pitch. I might read that. I might get back to you. The other thing is when you do messages at nighttime, a lot of hiring managers or people will put on their OOO messages. When that happens, you won't get those during the middle of the day. But if you get those at nighttime, more often than not, when you do get them, they'll have their contact information on them. And if you want to do a follow up by phone call, you can. I'm not saying do that. I don't do that a lot of that, but it is there if you need it. But Outlook is my jam all day long, all day strong, and it's never. And I just want to be clear, it's never the first email, people. This is a
yep.
follow up approach. It is never the first email. So the first email is the funny personality, but then you have to follow up. And my thing is about a 4-step follow up in a week's time, and that's about it.
Beautiful. That's awesome, man. So I want to open it up to questions. So we got a couple coming in here. So I think one of the questions is what does this first sentence typically revolve around? So let's not get into like the nitty gritties of that really specifically, but what I think. I think what more than anything is gonna give you a ton of value, people, is it's not about just saying specifically what Mike's saying. It's getting the mindset right here, right? And understanding where like the conversation should be going and like how you should be engaging your clients. Like a lot of people will put out like an NPC email and be like, hey, like I saw you have a post, or I saw that you guys hire data engineers with Python experience, and I've got a great candidate with 10 years of experience from Facebook and 5 years of experience from here, and yada yada yada, and just like listing off this like bulleted point. So one of the things like I talk about all the time is like, don't sell the vacation, or sorry, don't sell the TSA checklist, which is essentially the experience. Sell the vacation, and like Mike, could you just elaborate on that a little bit? Like, what do you think about that?
So, I mean, I'm not even, my first email, here's the deal. 97% of emails are read on phones. So you got to have a decent subject line for them to even open it, right? They're in a meeting. They want to look down at that. It's got to be you got to have a quality subject line. Your subject line is key. And like there's a bunch of them you could do. And I'm not going to go into specifics. If you want to talk about that, we can talk into whatever, but your subject line is big. The goal is the subject line is real simple. It's a one-step process. You're trying to get them to open that email. If that subject line is good enough and they open that email, you've won the subject line. If they open that email, the goal is for them to finish the email and read the whole thing. If your email takes more than, I would say, 25 seconds to read, it's a problem. You should not be long-winded. It should be boom. It should be Steve. Here's the deal. I need 25 seconds. I have no idea whether you're hiring or not. Whatever. That's kind of an idea. It doesn't matter whether they're hiring or not. The point is that you're talking to them. You think they're a hiring manager. You talk about them. Hey, I think you're a hiring manager at this company. Whether or not you are, I've got a candidate. I have no idea who to get them in the right hands. I want to make some money with you guys. And you flat out talk about this is what I want to do. I want to help you out. Feel free to, if you could just reply back with yes or no, I'm on my way. Like, boom. And it's just boom, boom, boom. And like, you don't need to be long-winded. You don't need to be whatever. You can be fun about it. You can be whatever. And there's a lot more in depth on specifics that I could go into on like how to cater a message. Obviously, I'm not going to do that here because that's kind of what I'm doing with my coaching thing. But like, that is the whole point of the whole thing about I saw a post. No, it doesn't matter. Even if you did see a post, don't say that. Yeah. That's not what you're doing.
Yeah. I always talk about the fact that like, it's not about you. It's like anytime you have a message that's just kind of bringing in, like, I've got a candidate that's, ready to take a look at your opportunity. I'd love to get them in front of you. Like, it's not about you. Like you're just selling them something at that point. And like sometimes most emails, especially in the beginning, aren't necessarily about selling. It's more about uncovering. It's more about just, hey, getting them to respond and say, yeah, that kind of sounds interesting. Right. So, like I talk about this in the MPC email. Like instead of sending this super long email about like all the experiences bullet pointed out, like you can have those, but you could bullet point things that are specifically like that they might be having problems with, and getting to that aspirational state, specifically like your product or your candidate has how they help them get there, right? Like it doesn't have to be funny. It just has to be interesting. So if anybody out there is like thinking like, oh, well, I'm not funny, right? Like
No.
you don't have to be funny. You just have to be interesting. And how do you be interesting? Like
I know many $1 million billers that aren't funny at all. Like I'm not saying you need to be whatever, totally. And so like here's an example, right? If you were going to pitch a candidate to a job, and let's say you were like, hey, there's a data mining company, I have no idea, some startup, right? And it was just like, and they have a killer data engineer already working there, and that guy's name is Steve Smith. You could literally say Steve Smith's clone at your service, like, and just see what happens. Like, boom, and just who cares? And see what the only goal. Remember, the goal of the email. I need people to understand this. The goal of the email is not to set up a meeting. The goal of the email is for them to ask for the resume. That's the goal of the email. The resume is what, once you got them, basically you're selling cookies outside of Costco, and they're walking into Costco, and then like they like go, oh, cookies. Remember that guy's name when he comes back out? Try to get him to stop by the table. Same idea here. If they come back and say, sure, send over the resume, boom, now you got a bite. Now you got to take the email, you send the resume, now you turn that into a phone call. Like, it's not rocket science, but it is a science, but it's very, very simple. So like, just be quick. And I will say this, in your emails, your call to action should be as simple as they can get away with saying yes or no. They do not need to they don't need to have a long-winded, don't ask for 20 minutes of their time, don't ask for any of that. Your resume and your talent is what will get them on the phone, but you don't send that in the beginning. You just give them a pitch. Hopefully they say, sure, send away, or they say, kick rocks, F off, leave me alone, whatever, doesn't matter. And then boom, and then you're on, and then you got to be able to be a salesperson and do that. If you want coaching on all that stuff, that's what Will and I are here for, but that's the idea.
Yeah, man, that's huge. I think that's exactly it. The yes or no is the answer. I think you and I actually had this conversation when we first started at Cybercoders too. Is like, like, don't ask for time. Just like, hey, do you want to see your resume? Yeah. Or do you want to get more details on this candidate? Yeah, great. Like, you could be as like unique as possible as you want to be here, but just don't ask for time. Like, don't, like, that is not your goal. Your goal is not your goal in email and cold calling and all that stuff is discovery. Is this candidate somebody they'd be interested in? And the faster you can get to a yes or no there, then that's fine. And I think another part here is everybody talks about and about is niching, right? Oh, like, I've got a niche. and like that's the only thing I'm going to do. I'm gonna only only do software engineering, Python candidates. And right now you did tech, right? And you know you were a big biller in tech. At the end of the day, like tech's hurting, right? And I've said this many times, like don't fall victim to niching. What's your thoughts on that?
Couldn't agree more. Like what are you going to do when your niche goes down? Just going to be like, all right, landlord, okay, mortgage, hey, text down, can't pay. Like, what are you going to do? I don't. I mean, I'm not saying you don't. People, the riches are in the niches. Like, I agree, but like, you got to be able to find a new niche quick. Like, just because you're stuck in it. Like, it's almost being in a bad relationship. Get out of the relationship. Like,
Yeah.
whatever. And so, yeah, you got to be able to find an industry that is moving, and then go recruit. When people ask me, and I talk about this constantly, but people say, what are you an expert in? Dude, I don't know what Python is. I don't know what PHP. I couldn't tell you what C# is. When I first heard C#, I thought it was C Sharpie. I thought it was C hashtag, like Twitter. I had no idea what any of that stuff was. I'm telling you, like, my point is, and I'm making light of it, but like, it's true. My point is that I'm an expert in talking to people and figuring out what they're hiring for. Like, that's what I'm good at. All the other X's and O's stuff, like, that's what the hiring manager and the candidate went to school for. Let them knock all that stuff out. You just figure out the stuff if they're serious about making a job move and if the client's serious about hiring. You do that piece, you're going to be a killer recruiter.
That's freaking awesome, man. Well, I think we're coming close to time here. There's so much more I want to go into, and
I know, we could go forever.
I want to go into this more. And you have a whole client process that like is all about engaging the right kind of clients and ensuring that you have like these 5 points. Like we talked about this earlier, and we didn't get to talk about it today. But look, Mike, you're gonna come back on, right? Like we're gonna do this again. And if you want to get some of Mike's like expert advice right now, the man's coaching, he's doing his thing, and that's the thing, right? So he's the one that's helping out recruiters get from shitty billing, and to be honest, and like having a hard time right now, and get them running their desk again real fast. And his solutions are really simple. So if you want to book some time with him and you're an individual recruiter, you're working at an agency, and again, the best part about this is that Mike's method works for anybody that's in any agency. It's like, it doesn't matter if you're independent, it doesn't matter if you're an owner, it doesn't matter, like, it does not matter. I don't care what space you're in. My man's going to be able to help you out because this process fucking rocks. So definitely jump on, reach out to Mike. How do they reach you, Mike, and get a hold of you for some of that coaching that you have?
Yeah, you guys can find me on LinkedIn, Mike Anderson. I think I might be maxed out on connections. I'll try to get to anybody I can. If you reach out to Will can introduce you as well. I see Jason had a QQ for Mike. He says, do you have to be lean and need to be a top biller? I did lose 80 pounds, so I appreciate that, Jason. But no, you don't have to be lean and need to be a top biller, dude. You just have to be yourself. Like, if every biller was like, my dad used to always say, what a boring world this would be if everyone was just like me. Like, you don't need to be that. Just be yourself, and the hiring managers that are like you will want to work with you. That's all I'm saying. You don't need 100 hiring managers. You need like 4 or 5. You're good.
That's hilarious. So yeah, man, I appreciate you. And yeah, like you said, if you guys want to reach out to Mike, or if you need help getting in contact with him, let me know. I'll gladly connect him with you. Mike's also going to be a part of the Boom Lab too, so he'll be in there as well. If you I don't know how active he's going to be, but I'll make sure his information is in there so that way you can get a hold of him there. But Mike, I truly appreciate you jumping on here, sharing your knowledge, giving us your story, and really diving into how we can help each other out. And it's just a testament to see, your growth as a recruiter, as a human being. And honestly, I love you, man. Thank you so much.
Appreciate it, man. It was awesome to be here. I hope we got to what we needed to. I have no idea how that went, but hopefully it was a success.
And hopefully you guys loved it. Let us know in the comments. Ping it up. It's going to be on the recordings here, so just jump in and like give us your feedback. I want to know, like, what should we cover next time? If did you like the blaster trash segment? Should we continue that? And if you guys have emails that you want to send in for what's coming up over the next 8 weeks, we have some really great speakers here. They're going to be crushing it. I can't wait to announce October, to be honest, because there's some people who are even in the comments that are badass billers that are going to be jumping on here. Mike's shaking his head because he already knows.
Yep.
So
I'll be in there. I'll be watching.
Be sure to look out for that, and then like let us, if you want experts to look at your emails, you want experts to look at your messaging, this is the place to do it. Do it for free. Like, have some fun and get to know, some people who are crushing it. So again, guys, thank you so much for joining in. I'll see you guys next week. But Mike, again, thank you so much.
You
Talk to you
got
later.
it. All right, guys. See ya.